Under the same roof, we share the love, embracing the differences like hand in glove. Spreading peace and joy, it's a beautiful sight. Together we shine in each other's light. United we stand in love's pure might. Watching the world share in love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. Colors of harmony painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might.
Good afternoon to all the watchers. Thank you for tuning in to Watching the World, where at noon we cover the hot topics that's happening throughout the day. Today we have rather incriminating issues developing with Epstein and Donald Trump. We're not sure how this is going to turn out, but at any rate, there is a letter that Epstein put out allegedly before he unalived himself. And in fact, we have it today. We're going to get to it. We're going to go through line by line to make a determination as to what's happening in regards to the Epstein files. But before we get to that, we're going to move on and talk about Donald Trump's statements last night from Mar-a-Lago in regards to the Epstein files, his viewpoint on Bill Clinton and other individuals involved in this monumental case. In fact, Bill Clinton says, put all the files out, put everything on the table. So that seems less incriminating, but let's get to it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Were you surprised by the number of photos of Bill Clinton in the Epstein files? And can you commit to their full...
What?
And were you surprised by the number of photos of Bill Clinton in the Epstein files? And can you commit to their full release by the end of the year? Some of the victims were protesting that...
Now, I want you guys to notice that the President of the United States is going to pour all the cheese on Bill Clinton's lap. Notice this.
Too many of them were redacted.
I know there are a lot of people that are angry about all of the pictures of other people, but I think it's terrible. Look, I like Bill Clinton. I've always gotten along with Bill Clinton. I've been nice to him. He's been nice to me. We've always gotten along. Respect him. I hate to see photos come out of him, but this is what the Democrats, mostly Democrats, and a couple of bad Republicans are asking for. So they're giving their photos of me too. Everybody was friendly with this guy, either friendly or not friendly, but he was around. He was all over Palm Beach and other places. The head of Harvard was his best friend, Larry Summers. And Bill Clinton was a friend of his, but everybody was. I actually threw him out of Mar-a-Lago. And as a person.
Now, I'm pretty sure you guys have heard about Virginia Dufresne, rather, and how Ghislaine Maxwell, along with Epstein, were able to scout her out of Mar-a-Lago when she was just around 16 or 17 years old. So this is what the president is talking about. And he said, based on that activity, he threw Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago.
That was in Mar-a-Lago. I threw him out. This is Mar-a-Lago. It's the hottest place I think it's the hottest place in the world, but it's the hottest place in Florida. And everybody would come here. He'd come here. We actually threw him out. But no, I don't like the pictures of Bill Clinton being shown. I don't like the pictures of other people being shown. I think it's a terrible thing. I think Bill Clinton's a big boy. He can handle it. But you probably have pictures being exposed of other people that innocently met Jeffrey Epstein many years ago. And they're, highly respected bankers and lawyers and others. And they'll end up, because of guys like Massey, who's a real lowlife, whose polls are down to about 9%, by the way, in the great state of Kentucky. If you look at Kentucky, Kentucky is such a great place, but I don't know, they've got a couple of people on there that are very strange in terms of leadership. But Massey's a loser, and he likes it, and that he works with the Democrats. He's just being used by the Democrats, because what this whole thing is with Epstein is a way of trying to deflect from the tremendous success that the Republican Party has. Like, for instance, today we're building the biggest ships in the world, most powerful ships in the world, and they're asking me questions about Jeffrey Epstein. I thought that was finished. I believe they gave over 100,000 pages of documents, and there is tremendous backlash. It's an interesting question, because
Guys, take a moment to watchers to hit the like button, share, and subscribe. We're going to go through bit by bit to break down this whole Epstein, and all the clips that I have were just put out within the last 24 hours. So you're getting the most recent news on the case.
A lot of people are very angry that pictures are being released of other people that really had nothing to do with Epstein, but they're in a picture with him because he was at a party, and you ruin a reputation of somebody. So a lot of people are very angry that this continues. A lot of Republicans are angry because of the fact that.
So let me give you a little background. Last night, this is at Mar-a-Lago when the president gave his speech about all the grandiose ships that are coming out. In fact, he's named some after himself. And then the reporters are still asking him about Bill Clinton, not about Donald Trump, but they ask him about Bill Clinton being in the Epstein files. And these are the remarks.
It's just used to deflect against a tremendous success. Look, we have $18 trillion coming into our country. We have, I believe, we're going to have the most successful economy in history. We inherited a mess. Now prices are coming way down. Gasoline is less than $2 in some states, $1.99, $1.97, $1.90.
That is true, folks. Gasoline has come down tremendously. I covered it when Biden left office. Gasoline was right under $5, and in some states it's around $2.
$95 a gallon. $1.95. Think of that. A gallon. Nobody ever thought they'd see that. They don't want to talk about that. They want to talk about Epstein. And the problem is a lot of Democrats are being caught up in the web, like Larry Summers. Larry Summers was the head of Harvard. He's now been forced to resign from every board he's on, and he was thrown off the Harvard board. Now, he was at Epstein's Island a lot. I wasn't. I never went.
Most of these prestigious colleges and some of the vast companies of corporate America is really anyone involved with the Epstein files. They're taking the heat, just like we saw with Prince Andrew, and they're losing their position. Prince Andrew lost his housing and all of that. But we want to know what's going to happen in regards to the president of the United States and his viewpoint. Let's get back to it.
There, by the way. But fortunately, it's nice. But I never went there. But a lot of people did go there. But instead of talking about the battleships, or instead of talking about most favored nations drugs, we're bringing down drug prices like at a level that has never even been thought of, by thousands. Think of it, by 1,000%, by 1,200, 1,300, 1,400% in some cases. A drug that sells for $10 in London is costing $130 in New York. We're bringing it down to $20, and they're going to go up to 20. So they're going from 10 to 20, which is a doubling.
Okay, Island Beauty says, greetings all. Okay, Marcus says, in January, the not price of gas was $3.11. Not now, it's $2.91. Big deal. Okay, thank you for your expression.
It's a doubling. That's a lot, but it's a doubling. But we're going down to 20. So we're going down, if you can do your own math, but it's 2,000%, 3,000%. It's pretty amazing. And you know, the New York Times had a story about it, a small story, way in the back of the paper. It's the single biggest thing to happen with respect to drugs probably in 50 years. It's never been anything like this.
Guys, I have no issue giving the president credit when he's right. And I tell you one thing, to get the pharmaceuticals down, I think that is definitely a plus.
In my first term, I was able to get drug prices down 0.25%. It's the first time in 28 years that they went down. 0.25%. I was so proud.
Okay, Island Beauty says that gasoline is around $5 a gallon around Los Angeles. I was out there about 2 months ago. I can second that thought. Yes, indeed. Prices were around, gas was around $5.
Proud of myself. Now we're doing them 2,000%, 1,500%, 1,200%. That pill that sold for $130 will now be selling, as an example, for $20, because the rest of the world took advantage of us. Without tariffs, I could have never done it. I called up the heads of the countries. As an example, France, I spoke to a very good man, President Macron of France. And I said, Emmanuel, you have to raise your drug price.
So I know a lot of people are trying to understand what the strategy with the tariffs have been. So the president is about to break it down why he used these tariffs to try to implement lower prices in the United States.
He said, no, 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 we will not do that. I said, you have to. He said, no, I don't want to do that. Look, you're asking me if it go to $10 to $20. You're going to come way down to 20. We don't want to do that. Now, in all fairness, no other president even tried. But if they did try, there was actually a fake story in stupid USA Today. I didn't even think they'd make it anymore. I haven't. But I saw a story where Biden was trying to do this. Biden never tried to do it. Biden didn't know he was alive. He never tried to do it. But they're taking it from $10 to 20. So he would say, and the other leader said the same thing. No, no, we won't do it. I said, no, no, you're going to do it 100%. They said, nope. We're not doing it. We're not going to double our price. Because, again, if you go from $10 to $20, they're doubling their price. We're coming down, though, from $130 to $20 because we're going to get the lowest drug prices in the world. Whatever the lowest price is called favored nations, we're going to have the lowest price. So I said, no, no, you're going to. No, no, I will not do this. Politically, it's unacceptable. I said, Emmanuel, you're going to do it 100%. Please accept it now. Be nice. You're going to do it 100%. No, 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 I will not. I said, yes, you are. He said, why do you keep telling me I am when I'm not? Because if you don't do it, I'm going to put a 25% tariff on everything France sells into the United States of America. And that's approximately 20 times more than I'm asking for with respect to drug prices. He said, I see. I agreed to do it. Every other country said the exact same thing. They all said, nope, I will not do it. I said, all right, on Monday morning, you'll have the 25% tariff, everything you sell. In the case of France, it was wine, champagne, cars, everything they sell. It's 25 to 30 times the price of what we're talking about, at 25%. Every single country agreed. And that was the big problem. The drug companies were difficult, but fine.
Okay, Orlando says, how do we know that he got it down so much? He lies too much. Stella says, like, share, and subscribe. Thank you guys for becoming watchers. When you subscribe, also consider joining our Discord and also hit the notification so you know we go live every day at noon. And also we do deep dives at night. The next deep dive we're going to do is about Nicki Minaj and how basically she was at this big event, AmFest, and basically how in harmony with Charlie Kirk. Remember Charlie Kirk, right before he passed away, he wrote a letter to Netanyahu saying that Israel is taking on bad press, especially at these colleges. The younger generation does not really like Israel, so they needed to change that. So now what do we see? We see, especially in the community of color, you see Floyd Mayweather going forward saying, oh, I love Israel so much. He's in fact gone to Israel. And now we see Nicki Minaj taking that stance too. We're going to get to all that for the deep dive at night. But hit your like button, share, and subscribe.
Because we have a certain control over the drug companies. We had no control over these foreign nations. So every single country has agreed to do this. So we will take that pill price down as an example, talking about not just pills, we're talking about everything. We'll take it down from $130 a pill down to $20 a pill. And the rest of the world will take it from $10 a pill up to $20.
So whether you like the president or not, you have to agree that this is amazing if these prices are actually coming down, because when you get sick and you have to go pay for your pharmaceuticals, also with healthcare rising, every dollar you could save with pharmaceuticals is definitely a plus. So we have to give him credit where he's due, although we don't agree with everything. In fact, we don't agree with everything that anybody does, right? But Turple says tariffs will help remove income tax as well. Okay. AI says shield for golden fleets. Okay. Thank you very much for your comment. So now keep in mind that there was a photo. Remember, the deadline was Friday night at 11:59, according to Deborah, right? Our big star, Deborah. Okay, now keep in mind that there was a photo that was redacted involving Donald Trump completely. So the photo came out, they retracted it, and then they took on so much heat Well, now we're going to understand as to why they resubmitted the photo. Let's get to this as well.
Department has reinstated a photo of Donald Trump that had been removed from the cache of Epstein files released at the weekend. Officials said the image had been reposted after they determined there was no evidence that any Epstein victims were shown in the photo.
Now you have to agree it seems kind of shady to put the photo out and maybe the boss says, "Hey, what you put that out for?" That's what people think, right? So it's duly noted.
At least 13 files from the thousands released on Friday relating to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein had disappeared from the department's website. Democrats on the House Oversight Committee questioned the removal of the images, alleging an attempted cover-up, but the deputy.
So there you see in the photo, you see Bill Clinton chilling out in the jacuzzi. Also, this photo at large, you'll see Ghislaine Maxwell in the hot tub or pool with him. And there's a female with the face redacted. So Donald Trump has really came down on Bill Clinton about his activity and says, it's rather despicable.
Attorney General says the images were removed because of concerns raised by victims and out of an abundance of caution. Let's speak to CBS News correspondent Jared Hill about this now. Jared, hello to you. No let up in the pressure, and this is from both Democrats and Republicans, in terms of these files. Tell us the latest.
Yeah, Anita, I mean, if anyone thought that releasing the files would quell the interest in this, that is definitely not the case. There are calls for more Epstein-related documents to be released. And as you mentioned, that's coming from lawmakers on both sides of the political spectrum. So far, thousands of pages of records, including some pictures.
Before we get too far, Winter says France's drug prices has nothing to do with the U.S. Great point. Thank you for sharing that.
Of celebrities as well as politicians past, present as well have been released. But this is far from a complete accounting of all the documentations that the Department of Justice have in relation to Jeffrey Epstein and the investigations into him. There have been major criticisms from lawmakers and everyday Americans about the number of redactions as well. These are allowed in specific situations like protecting the identities of victims. But within the next couple of weeks, the Department of Justice is going to have to answer to Congress regarding why they're redacting certain things.
Now, when they say that the Department of Justice will have to answer to Congress, they're actually gearing up to try to impeach Pam Bondi because they're trying to paint this as a cover-up. Do you guys think this is a cover-up? Put a 1 in the chat if you think it's a cover-up, or a 2 if you think the opposite. Frankie D says everything will be more expensive for Americans. Thank you.
And specifically, what is being redacted?
So we're talking weeks. Obviously, the Christmas break will slow things down, but we're talking a very short period of time, essentially, Jared, when the rest of this material is due to be released.
Yeah, I mean, technically it was supposed to be released this past Friday was the full deadline. And that's one of the reasons that we are now seeing from, in particular, the two sponsors of the bill that required this level of transparency from the DOJ. They are saying that they're working on this inherent contempt charge against the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, calling it, quote, the most.
So we keep hearing all the talk about the redacting of the photos. Was it legitimate? Is there something to hide? And then the argument that comes from the Republican Party is, in fact, the reason why they're redacted is to protect the victims and so forth. Well, let's kind of get to the whole legal reasoning as to the redaction of these photos.
The department has now released a big new batch of documents in the Jeffrey Epstein investigation, and these include new details about Epstein's one-time friendship with President Trump. Look, there is a lot to go through. We said it's like more than 10,000 pages, so we are digging through this, but this is what is seen so far. In a 2020 email, an assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York wrote that Trump traveled on Epstein's private jet, quote, more times than previously has been reported, at least 8 times.
Okay, so here's the issue, right? Previously, we've seen the Department of Justice go back and forth about Epstein files. Pam Bondi says, hey, they're on my desk. Then her and Trump a month later come back and say, oh, there are no files. Remember those moments? Then they came back and says, oh, we do have files, but they're just Democratic hoax, right? So now we're learning that as far as the redacted and also how much Donald Trump was in the files, the numbers were not truthful. So again, that creates this whole cloud of doubting the situation.
Between 1993 and 96. And on a flight in 1993, according to the email, there was just 3 passengers: Trump, Epstein, and what's described as a 20-year-old woman. Being mentioned in a trove of investigatory documents does not demonstrate criminal wrongdoing.
And again, guys, we have to be truthful with ourselves when we take a look at this situation. People immediately, at least people who try to get away with things, said, well, the girl was 18 or the girls are 18. Yeah, okay, that's cool. But what about if the guy is 60 or 70 years old? Do you still look at it that way? You know, how old was the guy when this said person, this female, was born? You have to take a look at this from a righteous, from a truthful standpoint.
A reminder, and Trump has not been accused of being involved in Epstein's crimes. On Monday, the president did seem dismayed that the release of any and all of these files, though, could harm the reputations of individuals he said, quote, innocently met Epstein. Now, remember, he is the man they also signed into law last month, the measure requiring the Justice Department to do just this, release the files.
A lot of people are very angry that pictures are being released of other people that really had nothing to do with Epstein, but they're in a picture with him because he was at a party, and you ruin the reputation of somebody.
As we speak, CNN has a team working through the documents just released. We are going to bring you the findings as they come in. CNN's Caitlin.
Frankie D says the world is turning its back on the United States. Cray says literally you can't trust anything he says. Okay. Just my opinion, says MAGA, MAGA, MAGA. Okay.
Lance is live in Washington this morning. A lot to work through, and we're just getting started. Caitlin, what do you have so far?
We're just getting started, but the headline here is quite clear. Donald Trump is all over these documents in that first trove that the Justice Department.
Okay, so did you hear that? Donald Trump is all over the Epstein files. How can you argue that away? In fact, this whole thing was pretty much triggered. Again, I keep saying Elon Musk, when he says Donald Trump is the Epstein files, and this is where they had a major falling out.
Released on Friday. There were just a few very scant mentions of Trump, including in a picture collected with a bunch of other pictures. In this one, there is already one very illuminating email that was sent during the first presidency of Donald Trump while prosecutors in the Southern District of New York.
Okay, so the facts are coming out with this batch of 8, and I'm going to get to it before the end of this show. We're going to go through the mail piece that Epstein sent out right before he passed away, where he talks negatively about Donald Trump and what he was doing to young women. So we're going to get to that before the end of the show, so stay tuned. Lawrence says this fool is just ignorant orange goon who doesn't have a clue about much of anything. Stella says enjoy what you're watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and consider becoming a member.
We're working on the case against Epstein co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell. This is after Epstein's death. And one of those prosecutors writes, I'm going to read from this letter because it is what was new to the prosecutors at the time and what is new to us now, receiving these documents now in the public sphere from the Justice Department. The prosecutor, unnamed, an assistant U.S. attorney of the Southern District of New York, wrote on January 8th of 2020, the flight records we received yesterday reflect that Donald Trump traveled on Epstein's private jet many more times than previously has been reported or that we were aware. That's the Justice Department in 2020, including during the period we would expect to charge in a Maxwell case. On one flight in 1993, Donald Trump and Epstein are the only 2 passengers listed. On another, the only 3 passengers are Epstein, Trump, and a then 20-year-old. On 2 other flights, 2 of the passengers respectively were women who would be possible witnesses in a Maxwell case. And then the assistant U.S. attorney concludes this email by telling his or her supervisors or superiors in the Justice Department didn't want any of this to be a surprise down the road. That's a direct quote. Now, Donald Trump, he has not.
It seems like they're getting more intel from the Department of Justice, the emails that are going back and forth between those that are in the administration. So that's where we're starting to see some real touchy situations. Also, we're going to get to a lawsuit that was in New York against Donald Trump involving this 13-year-old. We're going to get to it just from the legal documents. I'm not putting any spin on it. I'm just putting out the information that's public record, guys.
Commented yet on this particular revelation in the Epstein files coming out overnight and this morning that we are now surfacing for you here. But Donald Trump has downplayed his relationship with Epstein in the past. And of course, this is something that is documenting his connection to Epstein, traveling on that private plane in the 90s. So many years ago, Kate. But Trump even yesterday was saying that everyone was friendly with Epstein. He was all over Palm Beach. And Ghislaine Maxwell, this past year, has said in an interview with the Justice Department talking about Trump that she never saw him do anything that wasn't gentlemanly, that was any sort of impropriety at all. That said,
so the question arises, then why is Ghislaine Maxwell in prison? She told Todd Blanche, who is in Donald Trump's administration from a legal standpoint, basically that Donald Trump didn't do anything wrong. Neither did Epstein. So why is she locked up?
This is a document that shows the possibility of Donald Trump having an intersection with Ghislaine Maxwell and the criminal case against her in which she was convicted for sex trafficking of minors. Clearly, this did not come out in the trial.
Whether you like it or not, after Ghislaine Maxwell met with Todd Blanche and he questioned her, right, ahead of everyone else, I keep saying, when I attended Donald Trump's trial here in New York, he received 34 felonies. The same attorney that represented him there is also representing him and working for the administration. He came over with Donald Trump. After he questioned Ghislaine Maxwell, who was also seeking a pardon, right, she was able to be moved to a prison camp that is much sweeter than the prison that she was in. So that's why the question remains, why was someone guilty of SA, right, assault, why was she allowed to go to a prison that they do not accept those type of prisoners under any circumstances? It makes you wonder what's happening.
But it is a pretty revelatory document. And Kate, it's just one page right now. This is the one page that I've walked you through. There are many, many more documents that we are piecing through this morning to see what else may be news here. But Donald Trump is in the latest batch of the Epstein files.
Yeah, much more to come, as Caitlin's laying out very clearly. Caitlin, thank you so much for jumping on. I really appreciate it. Sarah.
All right, joining me now is.
Okay, very good. So now we get an understanding of some of the discrepancies that we've seen. But now we're going to understand the redacted photos and why they are actually redacted. Let's get to that as well.
Sort of a protocol that the DOJ has to follow when they decide what they should or shouldn't redact?
Well, this is a unique situation. The protocol here is really in the Act of Congress that was passed. It sets out in great detail what they're supposed to produce and what they're permitted to redact. And the redactions are supposed to be limited to victim identifying information, what's known as CSAM, or essentially child porn.
Now, a key point I want you guys to keep in mind, because I follow pretty much everything moving in regards to Donald Trump. Pam Bondi basically said back in June that they had went through the files and Donald Trump is not in the files, right? Okay. Friday night when the deadline came, Todd Blanche came forward and he basically said, oh, we had to go through the files more and redact them in accordance to this law and video that we're considering now. But if you went through all the files before, why has the story changed now? We have to understand this.
Pornography, national security or classified information, and some other kind of images of death or injury and that sort of thing. The Act also specifically says you cannot redact the names of people other than victims for purposes of embarrassment or, potential people that they looked into as suspects, which is very unusual. Let's make that clear. But there is now a law on the books that is telling them this is what they have to do.
So it sounds like, according to the mandate or the law, there's very little that they could, according to their discretion, redact, right? It would be like CSAM sensitive materials, essentially, right?
Yes. I will say, though, in his letter to Congress, the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, I think very interestingly put that that the department was going to withhold certain documents on the basis of three privileges: the deliberative process privilege, the attorney-client privilege, and the work product privilege, which signals to me that they are not planning to produce the most useful documents, which would be things like the prosecution memo, draft indictments, internal communications about who to charge and whether to charge people and who to investigate, which
Usually I don't give my opinion, but I will say this. It looks like they have a strategy to slowly release the files. And in so doing, they put out Michael Jackson, Chris Tucker. They try to soften the public understanding of these files so that when the major issues come out or leak out, then you've already become accustomed to saying, well, listen, because I hear these talking points in the comments. We get a lot of people coming through. Oh, well, Michael Jackson was there, Chris Tucker, Bill Clinton. They hope that you see so much of Bill Clinton that you won't pay attention when the big shoe drops.
again, the act that Congress passed specifically requires them to produce those documents.
So I'm starting to see this end up in the court system, essentially, right?
Potentially,
invoking all these privileges that you're talking about, right?
Yes, I think what Congress might try to do first is, there's been talk of holding the Attorney General in contempt or even articles of impeachment. I think a lot of this is about putting pressure now on the Department of Justice to speed things up, to speed up their disclosure of documents, and to potentially produce more than what they intended to initially.
Well, the grand jury testimony, Nadia, is heavily redacted. And there's more black on that page than any space left. And so how broad, when we're talking about the grand jury transcript, how broad is the discretion of the DOJ to redact the grand jury transcript? I mean, one of the things I noticed is that some of the victims' names who wanted to be anonymous were actually not redacted. Like you said, they should have been redacted. Yeah. And then it seems to me like perpetrator names were redacted. So when we're talking about the grand jury transcript, is there a specific criteria for that?
I think, again, it's based on what the law says.
Okay, we want to make sure everybody gets heard here. Frankie D says they are protecting Trump at all. That's why things look fishy. Okay, good comment. Penny says, how about the redacted list, fools? Okay. Also, distraction machine on America's side. Israel's side runs the show. Treason. Okay. On a half shell. Thank you very much. Eric says, and Eric, thanks for coming back. Thanks for the continued support. I think this is like the 5th show that I've seen you at. Eric says, does not matter. They're not the president. All right. Very well.
Here. And they should obviously be redacting victim names. If they didn't, that's a clear mistake and failure, and I assume unintentional. But I understand that they released some of the grand jury material that was completely blacked out, has now been released. It looks like the Southern District of New York was using the grand jury less as an investigative grand jury and more as just going to seek an indictment and using an FBI agent or a detective as a summary witness. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure that the grand jury transcripts are where actually the really useful information is going to be.
It would be in those memos.
The memos, FBI 302s, which are reports of interviews. And also, something I don't think we've seen yet is affidavits in support of search warrants. Those often lay out the evidence at that time in the investigation in detail to convince the judge that there's probable cause.
Why we need to go and search this person's home because this person did X and Y. Yeah, that's the real, yeah.
Okay, so we get to understand the logistics about it. Danny says one of the many problems we face is that these bad faith actors are taken seriously at their word. Okay, Stella says like, share, and subscribe. Thank you guys that have subscribed to the channel. John Stevenson, welcome back, says these people are beating a dead horse. Find some real news. Okay, well, this is the top subject of the day, so everybody wants to know.
Setting aside the left versus right, the political arguments on each side, is the drawn-out timing of the release in this drib and drab format, do you see this as a legal problem? Is this going to end up in court?
I mean, it very well could. I think this Department of Justice doesn't seem to be concerned about that. They, in many matters, don't seem to be concerned about the courts, and I think they are kind of calling Congress's bluff to see if they're going to enforce the act in any way.
All of that takes time. What is the end game in all of this? I mean, you know, what can we expect to eventually see? Because at the end of the day, these victims have waited a long time to learn more about, you know, justice in this case. So
The victims continue to wait for someone to hear their cries, so much so that we've even seen a key witness unalive herself, which is quite questionable too. We have to wonder what's happening here. And again, there's actual court cases in New York City involving this matter, so you have to consider that. We're going to go through that today during this lunch hour. So when you see the court documents, you could actually look up these documents yourself as well to help substantiate or help you come to a reasonable conclusion in regards to these matters, okay? So let's get to the victim. Let's hear from a victim in this case to get a sense of what was really happening.
This now is one of the survivors of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Her cooperation with the FBI was key to putting the disgraced financier behind bars. She is Marina Lacerda, known only as minor victim number 1 in court documents until she spoke out.
Poor child. My heart goes out to her. RC says Trump 2028. Dirty Money says Tampon Tim allowed billions to be stolen from the children's services. And Alan Beauty always supports, says almost every media source is covering this and will continue to cover this until the public is satisfied. I say amen to you, Alan Beauty. You hit the nail on the head. Let's get to it.
Out on this program about her experience. Marina, so good to have you back on the show. I know that you have long advocated for the release of the Epstein files. What's your reaction to the Department of Justice missing Friday's deadline to release all of them?
First of all, I'd like to say thank you for having me back on here. And, you know, I think all of us...
Listen, I follow this media thing every day, and let me tell you, if the Epstein files was all about Bill Clinton and just Democrats, believe me, and I'm independent, but believe you me, those files will be everywhere. You'd probably have them texted to your phone, but there has to be something on both sides of the aisle here, and that's why you see all of these discrepancies, these inconsistencies when it comes to the Epstein files. And I think it speaks for mankind in general, and that if you don't have laws, a lot of men would do some decrepit things. And that's the bottom line. That's the sad part, that you have to make a law saying you can't touch children. Like, what's the need for that? You should know right or wrong. But the reason why we have these laws is because people, the heart of man is wicked, definitely.
Survivors are extremely upset and infuriated of how the DOJ have, you know, taken this and how they've, you know, I guess they have looked at us again and failed us again and have not respected our wishes. They have redacted the names of some of the victims, leaked some of the victims' names out, and then unredacted, redacted the names of the powerful men. So we are very, very confused on what's going on here.
In a statement today, you and other survivors of Epstein called out the Justice Department. The statement reads in part, the very agency tasked with upholding the law has violated the law, both by withholding massive quantities of documents and by failing to redact survivor identities. What do you want to see the DOJ do next to protect victims and also comply with the Epstein Files Transparency Act?
I think the DOJ needs to do their job. That's number one. It's very simple.
For those of you that are just coming in, this is an actual victim of Epstein, and we're going to consider quite a few of them during the lunch hour. But listen to the cries of an individual touched by the terrible tentacles of Epstein.
We asked them for a simple task, which redact the names of the victims to keep them safe and unredact the names of these powerful men who have been nothing but been a predator to, you know, us and hopefully, you know, not to other women after that. So we asked for them to please unredact these names. And
now keep in mind that a lot of these individuals that are involved with Epstein are billionaires, rich, wealthy, millionaires. You would think that at that level in life, people would know how to behave themselves, But no, they have to go and abuse and take advantage of the weak. What's really happening? We need to understand this at a bigger, larger level.
Bring these men to justice.
We've seen photos of Epstein's luxurious estates, for example, and at the same time, 119 pages of jury minutes that were entirely blacked out. What does it feel like for you seeing what has been and what has not been released?
You know, we have been through so much at this point, and we are just tired of asking for just one simple thing. It is really simple. It's stop protecting these powerful men and protect the survivors. That's what we've been.
RC says, I'm going back to Fox News, real news. See, I understand. I know it hurts. This is independent news over here. So we talk about the things that legacy media might not say. So that's the important reason for my voice and those of the liking who are not afraid to speak out and talk about these issues and not with a slant. So I typically put it out according to as it comes out, not according to what I believe.
Asking for, can we just ask for the DOJ to do their job? I mean, we go back in 1996, Maria Farmer made a huge accusation, a huge claim with the FBI, and nobody ever followed up with it. And now we're looking at it and saying, wow, this really happened. How can a woman be making such a serious accusation not be true and nobody looked at it? So, you know, we do ask the DOJ to do their job.
In a social media statement on Sunday, the Department of Justice said it is committed to redacting only what is legally required to protect identifying information about victims, minors, and potential victims. What's your response to that?
My response is, let's just, you know, one of the pictures that they had with Jeffrey Epstein's landline, and we don't even know where that landline is. It looks like it was in the Virgin Islands. We don't know where. Why are all the names redacted there? We do know that none of the survivors or the victims' names are on his speed dial. So we can just start off over there and say, DOJ, you have messed up right there. You've redacted important names just on that landline. So we do know that you guys are redacting important men that have done wrong.
I think they should release the files and call it a day and let them fall as they will. Let's take a look now and see what's actually straightly said about Donald Trump. I think this anchor actually gets to the point of the matter. Actually, I know him from the covering cases together, but let's check it out.
Jeffrey Epstein's sexual abuse of children and sex trafficking. Donald Trump said in 2002, I've known Jeff for 15 years, terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It has even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. The younger side. How many?
Those are confirmed words from the President of the United States. We're just taking it as it comes.
48-year-old men do you know who invite 14-year-old girls to their parties? Jeffrey Epstein did that, and so did the 48-year-old Donald Trump. The New York Times reports that Donald Trump held parties at his home.
I want you guys to pay attention to what the New York Times has to say. This is very important. Pay close attention.
In Florida, where he invited 14-year-old girls. Tina Davis, who worked with Ford models in the mid-1990s, said in an interview that her Ford booker instructed her to get dressed up and attend a Mar-a-Lago party in late 1994.
Did you hear that? A Mar-a-Lago party? Pay close attention.
And new to Miami, she was told to dress sexy, according to her mother, Sandra Coleman, who had accompanied her to Florida. 8 or 9 other models came along on the bus. All the girls were really young, Ms. Coleman recalled in an interview. Some of them could have been in...
Folks, it don't look good. It don't look good.
Training bras. When they arrived at Mar-a-Lago, Ms. Coleman said her daughter was promptly handed a glass of champagne. She took it away, but waiters kept offering more. Each time one of the middle-aged men at the party approached her daughter, Ms. Coleman would walk over and introduce herself as Ms. Davis's mother. During a trip to the bathroom, they ran into Mr. Trump's new wife, whom they had met earlier, Marla.
Okay, so now, allegedly, this is what Donald Trump's wife had to say. I need you to really pay close attention to what stated.
Maples clasped her hands, Ms. Coleman recalled, and looked her in the eye. Whatever you do, do not let her around any of these men, and especially my husband, she told Ms. Coleman. Protect her. 14 years old, invited to Donald Trump's home, handed champagne repeatedly. Unlike her former husband, Donald Trump, Marla Maples, Donald Trump's second wife, responded to New York Times inquiries about that story. The New York Times reports Ms. Maples denied making the comment, "I would always protect young women in any way I could," she said, "but I am sure I didn't specifically say that about my daughter's father." Donald Trump's second wife, Marla Maples, received a substantial financial settlement in her divorce from Donald Trump. The Times reports Mr. Epstein was a frequent guest at Mar-a-Lago parties. A woman who said Mr. Epstein trafficked her in the late 1990s and early 2000s recalled attending at least a half a dozen of the parties, beginning when she was 17. She told the New York Times that the invitations she received when she...
Now, what is the 17-year-old doing at these parties? You have to ask these type of questions to come to a reasonable conclusion about what this big picture is all about.
He was 17, were, quote, to be Donald Trump's guest at Mar-a-Lago, according to one invitation she shared with the Times. The parties were open bar and no one checked IDs. She said Mr. Trump was...
Paul says, I love this channel because you allow me to talk about things other channels get offended over. Yes, indeed. As long as you're not offending someone else or bullying someone else, you can say whatever you like. And also, if it's something questionable, I'll ask you to show your sources, source up. And that's just how we operate. We make no intentions to slander anyone. We just try to process the facts and not just rumors. This is not a gossip channel. This is a channel that seeks out and talk about the news.
Always all over them, she recalled.
Here's fresh reporting from Julie K. Brown on DOJ's botched release of the Epstein files this past Friday. She says, quote, the rollout did not go smoothly. Victims and the public were upset by the small amount of material, the heavy redactions, and the government's failure to place any documents in the proper context. The digital download included hundreds of photographs, none of them labeled, and did not include witness and victim statements made to the FBI. Quote, many of the redactions were of material that has previously been made public. Again, redactions of material that has previously been made public or that was supposed to be unsealed under the new law.
Okay, so Chad says, I've heard MAGA say Trump was an informant. Informants are part of a criminal enterprise who get immunity. Not a great argument there, LOL. Thank you for your comment.
Joining us now is Julie K. Brown, investigative reporter for the Miami Herald, and the woman whose reporting we can credit for knowing anything that we know about this story in the first place. Julie K. Brown, it is really nice to see you again. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Julie, what have you been hearing from some of the Epstein survivors since the release of these documents on Friday?
I think that it's starting really to turn into anger at this point, especially with a lot of these victims have found their own names that have been not redacted in some of this material that has come out.
Sean makes a great point, says Fox News networks and friends will never turn their back on Trump. Great comment.
And they're quite frustrated because they see so many other redactions that are saying it almost appears as though the government made sure that they redacted the information that perhaps were clues or provided information about what happened in these cases or who was involved, but they didn't pay enough attention to making sure that they would protect the victims' identities.
Okay, very good. So there you have it in regards to Donald Trump and the latest news when it comes to the Epstein files. But we're going to get to now something that's quite sketchy, just to say the least, so just bear with me. But first, I want to show you that you can actually go out and seek the legal documents in the New York City Southern District Court when it actually comes to a lawsuit involving a minor, a lawsuit that was against the President of the United States. I'm not speaking on the facts of it per se, but I'm just saying you can seek it out if you have some question or you want to know what it's all about. Let's look at the rough draft of it. Okay, so there you have it, folks. This is the actual lawsuit here, documentation. So you could take some time and actually go and check it out for yourself. But these transcripts are available to anyone who wants to check it out as well. So this is involving, I think, the 13-year-old. So you could research it for yourself. If you have any questions or doubts about it, just do that. Let me show you one other thing here. Let's get to it. I want to show you this letter that Epstein sent out allegedly right before he passed away. So I just have to take a moment. I want to read it to you. It's written in cursive. Okay, so we're going to take a moment and try to get to it. Now, Epstein allegedly sent out this letter. You can see it came from Epstein. Okay. You can see it went through the actual mailing process. All right. It says, "Dear LN, as you know by now, I have taken the short route home." So basically, Epstein is saying that I've taken my, he writes this and he's saying by the time you receive it, I've already unalived myself. Okay. He says, "Good luck. We shared one thing, our love and caring for young ladies and the hope that they'd reach their full potential." Okay. So these are some expressions that he's sharing with this individual. Okay, now he says our president. So at the time of Epstein's unalivement, who was the president? Let's take a moment out and see who can tell us who was the president when Epstein was unalived, and when who was the president? Was it Biden? Was it Trump? Tell us who it is in the comments. So anyway, Epstein says our president also shares our love of young, nubile girls. Okay, so this is what Epstein wrote right before. This is some of the last things that he wrote. He says, our president also shares our love for young, nubile girls. When a young beauty walked by, he loved to grab, snatch. Okay, so he says, our president also shares our love of young, nubile girls. When a young beauty walked by, he loved to grab, snatch. Where are we? Ended up snatching, grab in the mess ball of the system. Okay. Life is unfair, and yours basically truly, Jeffrey Epstein. So it's interesting, if true, that this is what he would have written, maybe trying to send out a message, right? It's just like a last testament of some sort. Okay. But this is a part of the data drop that occurred today, folks. This is what came out. So little by little, they're releasing these files, and they're quite damning, just to say the least. I think anyone with a reasonable conscience could come to that conclusion. Now, if we're here at this moment, I can only imagine what's going to come out next, right? Sean says CNN is telling the truth with recipes. Okay, Danny says always remember that the corporate media is owned by billionaires and they create millionaires to bring you to the news. I like how you go to many sources. Yes, we go to many sources to try to have reach a rounded conclusion about what's happening in the media. So there you have it. That's pretty damning, if true. But this is what was released in the data batch number 8, as we anticipate data batch number 9 to come out. And as you know, I'll be covering it just as soon as it comes out, folks. But that doesn't sound good. And let me tell you something, if it was Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Biden, I think a lot of people in the country would take a different position on it, right? So a lot of times we see things through the lens of what we like or what our belief systems are. But at the end of the day, we should be able to accept the truth as it comes out, or consider the facts not through some biased way of reasoning. And that's why I always say we can easily say things positive about the president, that like the pharmaceuticals or taking care of crime in some of the major cities, right? These are all things that we can say positive about the president. Now we're going to move on to the Venezuela strikes. There's a new strike. Let's get to the footage.
Department has confirmed it launched another strike on an alleged drug boat, this time in the Pacific Ocean, killing one person. That brings the total number of strikes to at least 29 since September, with more than 100 people killed. The Trump administration's intensifying campaign against what it calls narco-terrorism comes as the U.S. continues to ramp up pressure on Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. Over the weekend, troops seized a second sanctioned oil tanker, and President Trump says there's a third in its sights.
It's moving along, and we'll end up getting it. Venezuela
has slammed the U.S.'s strikes and seizures of oil tankers as piracy. The country's government has introduced an anti-piracy bill. On state TV Monday, Maduro said President Trump should focus.
The narrative that's in the media is that these strikes are because of drugs, such as fentanyl and so forth. We saw previous reports, especially, right, when it comes to Mexico. Donald Trump was really putting the screws to China because China was supplying the chemical agents used to create fentanyl and other harmful drugs. And because of these drugs coming into the United States, which has been happening all the time, Donald Trump really took a strong stance, and I commend the president for doing that. And drugs still obviously come in through Mexico. But when it came to Venezuela, that's the whole commentary that we heard, is that this is all about drugs and fentanyl. In fact, Donald Trump says that for each boat that is taken out in the waters surrounding Venezuela, it accounts for one boat is saving the lives of 25,000 Americans, okay? But later on, which turned out to be last week, the president came forward, which I showed you on this channel. He says that this is about oil, okay? This is about oil. Perhaps it's about both, but he definitely stated it's about regaining the oil contracts.
Focus on his own country. President Trump Monday directed this at Maduro.
We have a massive armada formed, the biggest we've ever had. If he plays tough, it'll be the last time he's ever able to play tough.
Last week, the president wouldn't rule out war with Venezuela, and Monday he threatened land attacks could start soon. The buildup against Venezuela has faced bipartisan criticism from members of Congress. Meanwhile, the president announced a new so-called Golden Fleet of battleships.
There'll be 100 times the force, the power. There's never been anything like these ships.
Surrounded by his national security team, he said they could be ready in 2.5 years.
Okay, so Dr. Fiduk says you're forgetting that Epstein didn't off himself, so any suicide note is suspect. Okay, and again, we probably shouldn't use the S word. We should say unalive self. Sometimes reading these comments, it's hard for me to actually redact certain words, but at any rate, Stella says, how do we know Elon wasn't in his feelings when he said that regarding Trump? That's a good point. He could have said that because he was mad at the moment. People often do that, so that's a good point. Brian Cantrell, one of our great watchers, says anybody can say anything. Let's remember that in 2007, Trump undermined Epstein and bought a property, and they had a fallout. Epstein thought process was, I can say this and put Trump under the pile. Okay. That's a reasonable way of looking at it. Thank you for that expression. Deborah says, allegedly microdosing, maybe Stella. Okay. All right. Cootie Queen says, how about we just say it? How about you stop trying to put stipulations on people's free speech? It's called, yeah, that's what it's called. But YouTube has their policies and certain words they do not want us to use, or they they mitigate the channel. So that's what it's about. This is not my rules. This is not me trying to put stipulations on anyone. I'm explaining to you what the YouTube policies are. It's very important to note that. William says, what's going on in the world? We're watching it. Thank you very much. Eric says, Elon was briefly sober when he said Trump was a PDF. Okay, that's another word we can't use. So I use the word PDF in the place of it. In fact, YouTube, Stella, who has done a great job at helping me navigate this, showed me a list of words that YouTube does not take too kindly with. So we just try to avoid them so that we don't have any issues when it comes to YouTube. All right. So I understand your frustration, but it is what it is, folks. That's what it is. So now, as many of you know, the last story we're going to touch on is Luigi Mangione. I've attended the last 3 weeks of his hearing here in New York City. We have sort of an update. On Friday, his attorneys, they filed a motion in court because they're calling Pam Bondi into question. So Pam Bondi is taking heat from the Donald Trump end, but she's also taking heat from the Luigi Mangione trial because they're saying she was somehow tied in representation with United Healthcare prior to what occurred with Luigi Mangione. Let's get to it, and we'll finish out for today our lunch news at noon.
Now on Manhattan, where Luigi Mangione's defense team is claiming that the United States Attorney General's decision to seek the death penalty is tainted by conflict of interest. Mangione's lawyers say that AG Pam Bondi's decision was influenced by her history as a lobbyist at a firm that represented United Healthcare's parent company, Ballard.
Guys, take a moment, hit the like button, share, and subscribe if you want to support the channel. Now, keep in mind that they're trying to, meaning Luigi Mangione's attorneys, Karen Agnifilo, Mark Agnifilo, and also Jacob Kaplan, they're trying to get this federal case. This is about the federal case. They're trying to get it thrown out on the basis of Pam Bondi's relationship in regards to United Healthcare.
Partners. Mangione's defense team calls this a, quote, profound conflict of interest. In court filings, his lawyers wrote in part that Bondi has violated the rules of the court and Department of Justice procedures, and that Bondi took unusually personal and prejudicial actions to ensure that the Mangione case was the first death-eligible case of the new administration. Mangione's lawyers have indicated that they want to investigate Bondi's ties to Ballard and the firm's relationship with the United Health Group, and will ask for various materials, including details of Bondi's compensation from the firm. Mangione's next court appearance is scheduled for January 9th in federal court, and we will, of course.
So when it comes to the federal court, his hearing starts January the 9th. I will be covering it from the courthouse. So if you're interested in getting all the facts as they come out in regards to Luigi Mangione, make sure you subscribe to the channel. When it comes to the federal courthouse, they do not allow cameras inside. So that's why we attend these trials and we come back and we report in regards to the things that we may have seen and heard to the best of our ability. We did this with Sean Diddy Combs, 9 weeks. I was in the main courtroom every day. It takes a big portion of sacrifice to do this, but we do it so that we can elevate our reporting and give you some inside knowledge on cases that are high profile in the United States. I will be covering Charlie Kirk's case in regards to Tyler Robertson as well, so I'll be in the courtroom for that. Also, there's a powerful case down in Texas, Carmelo Anthony, not the basketball player, but the young man who took the life of another young man at school. They were having a game and he was traveling, and perhaps it started raining. And so he went under the tent of the opposing team. And so the younger white guys started telling him, you know, get out of here, whatever. He's a black guy, right? So now you see the point of contention when it comes to the case. You can see why this case has such racial tensions with it, right? So we're going to cover that down in Texas. So he warned the young man. He says, hey, listen, if you keep bothering me or whatever, I'm going to take care of you. Allegedly, he took out a knife and unalived the guy. So we're going to cover that case as well. So much to cover here. And I appreciate all the support that we get. Make sure you like the video, share, and subscribe. That helps us to really push the video out to bring awareness to a lot of these subjects, especially when it comes to the President of the United States. That's an ongoing subject matter that I don't see going away anytime soon. And I don't really see that the Epstein files are going to be fully released because of the nature of the storyline. We started off this video showing you Donald Trump, right? And how last night he was explaining how Bill Clinton and how bad of a deal these videos are. So you can only imagine how he feels in regards to himself and being in the Epstein files. Let's finish up here with Luigi Mangioni's case.
Continue to follow this developing story and update you as we learn more. I want to quickly bring back in my guests to discuss this with us, trial consultant Sonny Slaughter and trial attorney Mackenzie Joy Brennan. Mackenzie, I'll start with you. What do you make of the claims by the defense here that there is in fact a conflict of interest? Because I would imagine, in addition to trying to deal with his guilt or innocence, getting the death penalty off the table is really one of the biggest jobs they're facing.
Oh, absolutely. And you have the federal trial and the state trial kind of racing against each other to see who gets there first. Obviously, the federal is the only one where the death penalty is on the table. I think that the claims that they're making here are significant. I think that the relief of taking the death penalty off the table is a bit more of a stretch. In terms of the actual conflict of interest, there is this potential continued profit-sharing arrangement between Bondi and this firm. She is already embattled because of her public statements versus, actions to follow through right now with the Epstein files. I believe that an investigation into that was just launched as of this morning, and their compliance with that. And, she has made public statements about wanting to bring the hammer down on Mangione himself. That being said,
you could actually go through and see video footage where Pam Bondi is basically saying that he's guilty of taking the life of Brian Thompson. She did not use the word allegedly. And in the United States, the key ingredient here is that you're innocent until you're proven guilty. And we know that in this particular case, Luigi Mangione has not stood for his trial to be found innocent or guilty. So his attorneys, especially with him being able to raise over $1.4 million from the general public, he has some of the best coverage as far as legal in New York. And so his attorneys are really fighting these three cases at a high level to perhaps save the neck of their client, which we can understand that. That's just how it works here in the United States. But a lot of what Pam Bondi said, sitting at her position, is what is being pulled into question. And perhaps it might be a reason why Luigi Mangione might stand a chance of avoiding the death penalty and also having key ingredients in his case suppressed.
prosecution has said pretrial publicity alone is not a defect that takes these sort of things off the table. So I could see an investigation happening. I think that it's more of a stretch when it comes to taking the death penalty off the table as a remedy.
Yeah, Sonny, quickly, I'd love to get your thoughts on this, and I couldn't agree more with Mackenzie. The idea that there may be some conflict here sounds like there might be, but again, even if they get her removed, I don't.
Susan says, I just found your channel, liked and subscribed. Welcome in, Susan. Nice having you as a watcher. She says, I will start watching every day. That's so amazing. Your content is important, and I like your neutral stance. Thank you so much, Susan. Welcome in. We look forward to seeing you every day. Keep commenting. I like to cover as many comments as I can, but each day we have more and more people joining. So it gets tough, but I do the best that I can. Brian says, welcome, Susan. This chat has the left, liberals, and the right, Republicans. We are all good people in here, so welcome aboard. Great job, Brian, for welcoming her in.
I think the decision for the death penalty is going to be affected because I'm sure whoever takes her place is going to go down that same path.
I'll be quick. Mackenzie, I absolutely agree with you. And I'll just say there is a reason why the top folks should not be talking about any cases at all, at any time. We keep seeing this happen. The right to remain silent should exist as it had been for DOJ for decades, and that is what should be happening. Let the law enforcement folks do what they do. Let the prosecution remain silent until they have enough evidence to put the death penalty on the table. Everybody should just stop talking at all about any of the cases. Stop speaking.
Checking in now.
All right. So she says everybody should stop talking about the cases and just be quiet. All right. Very good. So that's it for today, folks. Thank you, guys. We have a lot of new subscribers. Just so you guys can understand, we typically cover the news at noon at 12 o'clock each day, noon, right? But at night, at around 8 o'clock, we typically have more focused shows. We have a criminal defense attorney by the name of Calvin Johnson. He's been an attorney for 25 years. He's on every Sunday at 7 p.m. will be the new time for Calvin's show. On Thursday nights, we have Mama Flips. You probably know her son, Queen Flips. He's on the largest podcast in the United States, the Joe Budden podcast, whatever the name of it is. So he has a big voice. His mother is on this channel. We enjoy having her. She's very strong in her opinions, but, you know, we have a lot of people that enjoy her because they like pushing back on her in the comments section. That's what makes it beautiful. You get a chance to, you know, have a good friendly spar with her and her viewpoints. Much different than mine, but we all make the world go round. On Wednesday night, we have a law professor by the name of Candace Kelly. She comes on every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. It's nice to have her. We're preparing for Luigi Mangione. We discuss his case every Wednesday as we prepare for the hearing at the federal court on January the 9th. So there you have it. Those are the shows that we typically have. We're constantly adding, and we have some good shows coming along the way. We have a potential senator out of Texas. She's going to be running. We're going to have her on the channel. And we also have a new House representative coming on. We're going to have some conservatives coming on. I enjoy the conservatives just as much as I enjoy anyone else. Even though we sit from a independent point of view, it's nice to have both sides because I think there's truth at every level. I have yet to find any Republican that does totally believe 100% everything Republican. I think as Americans, our belief systems is based on our experiences in life. So you might like some Democratic points, you might like some Republican points. It's just how life works. You could be able to sit back and say, I like this about Trump. I didn't like this. Same thing about Biden. It's just the way we process life, right? Even family members, we like some things they do. We don't like the others. That's just the name of the game. But it's very important for us to understand these concepts. Now, I will close out and I will be covering also Candace Owens in regards to Israel, because I think that's a story that needs to be told. It's a rather complex story. But once I break it down, I think that those who really follow the channel will appreciate the whole history involving Israel and as to why she's taken such heat from Israel because of her viewpoints, as well as Tucker Carlson as well. So we're going to break it down in connection with Ben Shapiro. I'm putting it together as a deep dive. We're also going to get into John Benet Ramsey. As you guys know, Christmas Day is the anniversary in connection with her death as well. So I have a deep dive in connection with her. As you know, there's some new DNA evidence that has come out in regards to John Benet Ramsey. Most people tend to believe that it was an inside job, and perhaps some people even believe, now this is according to media, I want to make it very clear, they believe that perhaps something happened in regards to the son, right? That's the narrative that even some of the detectives walked away, that maybe John Benet was enjoying some pineapple because after she was deceased, they found pineapple in her stomach, right? And they feel like maybe the son did something to her. Now, this is according to the media. I'm just giving you some of the perspectives. And then the mother and father tried to cover it up, predominantly the mother, because they pretty much could prove, or they tried to prove, that the mother wrote the long, extensive note. Now, keep in mind that whoever unalived John Benet Ramsey, they wrote a long letter, and there was a rough draft where they started writing, and they made some mistakes. They threw that away, and they started writing this whole letter. They knew about the $118,000 bonus that the husband would have received and they sat in the house after unaliving her, placing her in this closet. It just doesn't make sense. So it's almost like Occam's razor. The simple answer is probably closer to the truth. So we're going to get to it. We're going to break it down to go back in regards to this case as it approaches its anniversary, but there's new DNA evidence. The father is still living. The mother actually died from cancer. So there's a lot to be said in regards to that case as well. We're doing a deep dive. Thank you guys for tuning in today. We had a lot of great comments. It's nice to see people who have different positions in life coming together to have a meeting of the minds. I think it's quite terrific. We have a lot of people that took the time to hit the like button, others who chose to subscribe for whatever reason. We thank you, and we look forward to bringing out more news, and we hope that each and every one of you have a great holiday season as we approach the Christmas and also the New Year holiday. Thanks for tuning in, and enjoy the rest of your day. We will definitely see you soon. Thank you.
Different voices, but the same song. Living a world where we all belong. Kindness leading the way, breaking the chains. In the symphony of love, the theme remains. Embracing diversity, brighter days in sight. Watching the world sharing love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. Colors of harmony, painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might. Watching the world sharing love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. The colors of harmony, painting the night. United we stand.